Welcome everyone to Who Needs a Film Critic. I'm your host, William Yelton, and today we will be talking with 9 strangers who have just finished watching for the first time the beloved 1997 rom-com, My Best Friend's Wedding. All right, so as mentioned before, everyone on this panel has just finished watching My Best Friend's Wedding for the first time. And today, these 9 strangers will give their raw reactions to the movie that they've just screened. Some of you on this panel might have loved what you've seen, while others might have hated it, and that's okay. As with any discussion on this channel, all viewpoints will be respected, but debate is encouraged. And when I say debate, debate. All right, so this panel comes from all different backgrounds, professions, ages, ethnicities, and geographic locations. And each person, I'm sure, will be bringing their own unique perspective to the conversation. At the end of the panel, you will send me your review of the movie 1 to 5, and I will tally up your rankings and give this film the average score provided by you, the panel. All right, so let's get into the conversation about My Best Friend's Wedding. Perhaps the most polarizing aspect of this movie is the main character, Julianne Potter, played by Julia Roberts, who the plot is focused around as she attempts to break up her best friend's wedding, hence the name. So I thought we would start this out with a little poll and see where the conversation takes us. So were you rooting for Julianne Potter to succeed, or were you wanting her to fail? I have a poll here on Zoom because Zoom is super cool like that. The results are in.
Wow.
5 out of 9 people on this panel said yes. 4 out of 9 said no. So a total of 56% of you said, hell yes, I wanted her to succeed at breaking up the wedding. Raise your hand if you were one of those people who said yes.
For the way in which the relationship between, who was it? Michael and Kim was portrayed, it didn't really seem like it was a good fit. And I just felt for Jules. Like I totally understood where she was coming from and trying to get with Michael.
I don't know if it was more like I was expecting it and that's what I kind of, I guess, wanted, but I think it was kind of a combination of both. And again, I also did feel for her. That was part of it. And so I think at the end of the day, I really just wanted them to end up together because that's what I thought was going to happen.
The chemistry just felt more natural between Mike and Jules. I just didn't feel that with Kim. It seemed kind of forced. The age difference was noticeable for me too. Yeah, I just didn't feel it. And from my minimal rom-com experience, it just felt like the way it was going, and I was proved incorrect.
You shouldn't give a shit about everything else in the way. And I felt like she knew exactly what she felt was right for her. And she wasn't caring that it might hurt somebody or maybe affect somebody else's life. So I wanted her to just go and close that deal and cash in. So.
All right, so my mom is in full agreement with everyone who just spoke, but the people who are against my mom, okay? The people who really think like, rationally, like, yeah, this girl definitely came in at the 4th quarter and she's trying to break up this poor couple. The floor is yours. Who wants to start?
Just from the get-go, like the whole description of how their relationship, when she was talking to George and she's like, oh, we've known each other for 9 years and we've been best friends. Okay, if you've been best friends for 9 years and you guys haven't revealed your feelings to each other, then that's the first red flag. But secondly, I felt that although we didn't get to see too much of the relationship with Kimmy, I just feel like there was true, like, genuine love. Like, he looked at her and loved her. And so the whole time I was looking at Jules, I was like, oh, you're such a villain. I hate you, but I love you at the same time, but I don't want you to succeed.
When Julianne first stated her plan of going to break them up, I was all for it. I was like, okay, Julianne, let's go. But because I was expecting Kimmy to just be this wretched, horrible little rich girl. And then we meet her and she's instantly the sweetest person in the movie. And I was like, oh my God, no, I don't want anything bad to happen to Kimmy. And then I think it was Zach maybe talking about how they didn't seem like they had much chemistry, but I thought Kimmy and Michael were a perfect match. It seemed like they went really well together to me.
Who that voted no? So there was 4 people that voted no. Are you surprised that the majority of this panel was rooting for her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not.
You're not?
No, it's a romantic comedy. She was the main character.
We're seeing this story play out from her perspective, and so it's hard as the viewer to kind of step back and consider the perspective of somebody who isn't the main character, if you will.
Every time she did something, she's like, I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this. Like, how did we think at the end of the movie she was going to be like, guess what? All of this stuff I did to get you. And he wasn't going to be like, wow, you're crazy. Like, so I was like, I feel like they have to see through her. Like, she's crazy. I love her, but she's crazy.
I really did enjoy her character too. I think honestly, I respected the hustle that she was putting in to like try to steal the man, but at the end of the day, I was still team Kimmy. But I did like her as a character.
I was not rooting for her at all. Not at all. Every time I just get angry with seeing her. And like, it's scummy. Like, it's just so scummy. I can't.
But it's Julia Roberts.
I mean, I love her, but she's in a whole other, like a lot of other movies that I can enjoy.
Did you appreciate the performance?
Sure.
It's not like a Pretty Woman character that everyone just like loves and like can relate to, and like, you know, it's a big love story. She's kind of kooky and crazy and just like, but really cute. So you like, but you know it's her. So it's definitely interesting to see the different sides people felt about it.
You gotta buy into that mission. You know, it makes it so much more enjoyable when you're like rooting for the success.
No, I was like, come on, Kimmy, stay with it. You got it, girl. Like, I was rooting for Kimmy.
As an editor, when I find an unlikable character, I will give them, I'll tell the writers to give them qualities, make other people like them, and make us see that. And I kept on waiting for this moment where we were going to have like other people liking her, and there wasn't. So halfway through the movie, I'm just like, my gosh, she's just genuinely an unlikable character in my eyes.
I try to have a little bit of empathy in the situation of, shit, if I had a best friend that I loved secretly for 8 years and I didn't do anything about it, I wouldn't be able to live, but I would need to do something. Would I go out in the, you know, the blazing glory that she did? Probably not. But I respect that, you know, I've been married for almost 5 years and I've known my wife for 20, and we were friends way before. And so if I didn't say anything years down the line, would I be in this situation? So did I go out and wreck her first marriage? No, I won't even comment on that. She did her own thing, that thing. But, you know, I still think, you know, you have to kind of live to what your heart says. I think she lived to her heart, but she didn't connect her heart and her head in thinking clearly very well. That's how I saw it.
Perfectly valid. Well, you know, one of the many strategies that Julianne implements to break up the wedding is to make her best friend jealous. And by doing so, she quickly concocts a plan to pretend like her other best friend, George, is about to marry her. The end result is perhaps the most iconic scene of the movie that people still remember after all these years. Let's take a look back at this scene and then discuss.
The moment I wake up,
I say a little prayer for you.
and all through my coffee break time, I say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part, oh how I love you.
All right, thoughts on the scene? Who wants to start us off?
I remember a couple months ago, I got in an argument with my mom because I was around the house singing Say a Little Prayer for You. And she was like, oh, I love that scene. It's the best scene in my best friend's wedding. And at the time I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, no, this is from Glee, obviously, like any Glee fans, you know the thing. And now I watched it and I'm like, oh my God, this is just as good. I was really vibing during that performance. They just kind of threw it into musical moment. And like, I loved how like the vengeful sluts, as they were called, were kind of carrying the background tunes. It just like layered nicely. And it was a nice like break from the seriousness of the movie, even though it's not a serious movie, but like to have a little musical number, I thought was great.
I have this song on my gym playlist out of all songs, Aretha Franklin.
I used to work at Family Video, which is a video store for those of you who don't know. And this scene used to replay on repeat on the screens that we had around the store. So I knew this scene from the movie. And so as soon as it came on, I was like, oh, here we go.
They didn't show it in our video store, thank the Lord. But no, I loved the scene a lot, but I also felt it was so forced from seeing so many movies in my life. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it seemed like out of nowhere, everyone could sing really well, even people that aren't singers. I just didn't like it, but I liked it.
But you liked the scene. It sounds like everything you're saying is you didn't like it, but yet you liked it. I'm really confused.
I'm confused. I simultaneously liked it and didn't like it, but it was very memorable. At least I will account it's very memorable.
I kind of agree with him. Like, I liked the scene. I wish it wasn't in the movie. It felt to me out of place. I was just like, okay, now there's a musical number. I felt the same about the beginning of the movie too. I was just like, this feels random, but it was enjoyable.
I think there's a possibility that there was more to this scene that we haven't yet talked about. One thing that I observed like very early on in this scene was basically how exciting everybody was, except for who was it, Michael and Jules. Like, they were sitting across from each other and they were both like very reluctant to join in on the hype that was happening. So I think that's another reason why I was kind of like shipping them, was because they seemed to be so like on the same page in that moment. And even while everybody was having such a good time, they were very reluctant to join.
I just want to comment on George, because he is by far the best character in the entire movie. And it's so
Who agrees with that?
because-
Raise your hand if you agree that George is the best character.
Yes.
Wow. So it's pretty much universal, with the exception of two people. But yeah, okay.
Someone said that, no one really liked her. I think it was Ashley said that no one really liked her in the show. And I was like, I feel like George didn't even really like her. Like, he was her best friend, but he was like, you're stupid and you're an idiot and I'm here to break up your plan. And I just feel like the whole scene was about him, like, showing how against it he was.
But I want to disagree with Skylar in the comment that George didn't like Julianne. Like, a good friend is someone who's going to be like, follow your heart, do this, give good, actionable advice, but be there also when she falls in her face at the very end. So I thought he actually showed that he liked her a lot, because if I was him and I didn't really like her, I'd be like, peace, like, go and do your thing, girl, I'm out. But he was there the whole way, right? So, but I myself in that scene, like, I can't sing worth a hell, but my wife came out and she could hear me singing along to it. I had a lot of fun on that scene. I thought it was a ton of fun, and I agree with Mason that it kind of broke up the kind of like, not seriousness, but just it brought in some kind of fun and some light to the movie there. So
I think you're so right. Like, I know that George really loves Jules, like, as a best friend, because there was a moment where I felt their chemistry and I was like, wow, what a good friend. It was when they were laying in bed and she was like laughing, crying, and he like grabbed her hair and like shook her head because she said something silly. And I was like, that is like a best friend thing. Like, I've done that with my best friends.
I think he loves her. He didn't like her.
The last thing I'd like to touch on with this scene is why, out of all things, did he come up with this story that resulted in a musical number that the whole restaurant breaks out into song? Why do this instead of just saying, we met at a restaurant? It was, and it was great.
I think he was just kind of bullshitting and going, I don't know what to do, because they were waiting on like, what did they say? And I feel like it was just the first thing that came to his mind. He probably loves the song, and knowing that everyone else probably loves it, it kind of turned the moment. That's how I saw it. So
might have been the last song you hear on the radio on the plane.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, I think just it goes back to his comment of, she said, you're gonna like embarrass me, aren't you? And he was like, yep, if I have anything to do with it, I'm gonna embarrass you. So I feel like he was like, yep, I'm gonna throw a musical number in here.
Another polarizing character to talk about is the best friend himself, played by Dermot Mulroney, not to be confused with Dylan McDermott. Some say no matter what the character says throughout the film, his actions just don't add up. Let's take a look at this scene in particular and discuss.
You've sort of been the woman in my life.
You've been the man in mine.
And this could be our last time alone. Together,
Except for that hot affair we'll have twice a year.
Except for that. Kimmy says if you love someone, you say it, right then, out loud. Otherwise, the moment just
Passes you by.
They both wanted to lean forward and kiss each other. And I think if one of them would have made that move, you know, in this story, it would have changed the whole course. But that pause totally ruined it, I think, because then moving forward, I think if I was that man on his side, I'm going, okay, she doesn't dig me because I just told her, but not telling her how I actually feel about her, and she didn't do anything about it. That's how I read that.
Let's get another poll out. Did Michael love Juliette more? 89%, 8 out of 9 of this panel said yes. The one loner said no. Who is the one contrarian?
That would be me.
Skylar,
Oh.
explain yourself.
He loves her, but like I said, I'm circling back to what I said at the beginning. You've been friends, best friends for 9 years. If you loved someone, if you wanted to be with them, like he says that he wants to be with Kimmy, he knew that she was the one. Like he would have said something a long time ago. And I feel like even that scene under the bridge where it gets all dark and he's like, we never used the word love a lot. Yeah, because you didn't really love each other that way. But now that there's a little hint of jealousy in there, you're feeling all these emotions because you're like, that's my best friend. I don't want to see them with someone else.
Let's hear from the other perspective.
He always wanted more from her and like wanted to go all the way and like for her to be all in and show her all the yucky love stuff that they were talking about. So maybe he does love her, but like he knows that Kimmy's what he actually wants for his life and he's just kind of letting her go. I don't know.
I feel like I kind of agree with that because he did love her 9 years ago, whatever. But I think like that scene too, like I think it was Chris that was saying that he was basically saying, oh, like wanting her to say that she loves him. And then like she didn't do it, he didn't do it. And then they like lost that moment. So I think watching it back, I'm like, I think he really did love her and wanted more from her, but she just never got there.
That boat scene, like that ship sailed when it didn't happen, but I think there would have been a different reaction if she kisses him on the boat. I still think that would have happened. I don't think they would have put the wedding off necessarily, but I think he would have really reconsidered where he was at.
She actually like closed her eyes when he said like you should tell someone if you love them. She's like, you should. And then she closed her eyes and I felt like there was this brief pause and this moment of like letting it go. And I felt like that was very telling of how things were going to go because she did end up telling him, but that I didn't really know in that moment if she loved him. I don't think she loved him.
I also feel like the movie is kind of pointing the audience into the direction that he's just completely clueless as to the fact that she's completely in love with him. Do we buy that? I mean, do we buy that he like just is so dumb, or do you feel like he knew this whole time?
I don't know how he wouldn't, because every time they're together, there's so much tension between them that obviously they see it, everyone else around them sees it. I was personally confused like how Kimmy's family was so okay with her being there, because I feel like they would have all seen her as a threat in real life, but they were very welcoming of her, which I wasn't expecting.
We've discussed that that most of the people on this panel think that yes, he loved Julianne more, but did he make the right decision in the end?
Hell yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
When she finally like spoke and stuff, like he clearly made his decision. Like he chased after Kimmy and she chased after him, and that like it was clear that they had said what they needed to say. But
Maddie, you led us right into our next scene, so thank you very much. All right, let's take a look and discuss.
The tonnage of
Yes. It is not going well. George, this is all your fault. I kissed him, and this is what's happened. Kimmy, she ruined everything, and Michael started chasing her.
Michael's chasing Kimmy?
Yes.
You're chasing Michael?
Yes.
Who's chasing you? Nobody. Get it?
There's your answer, Kimmy.
No.
Yes! Jules, you are not the one.
All right. Thoughts?
Well, I was saying this is where I gained the most respect for George as my favorite character because, right from the get-go, he was giving her truth. And I think she was super selfish, right? I think what he said was to like follow your heart, but it doesn't mean when you follow your heart, you're always going to have the fairy tale ending. And she didn't get it,
She was like, go tell him, go kiss him, tell him goodbye, and go home. That's what you came here to do. Like,
Right.
just go say it. That was like why you're crying in the first place. But then she's like on a car chase, and he's like, look at yourself. No one's chasing you.
The kiss was supposed to be the closure, not the key to open the door. It was
Right.
to close it.
Yeah.
Tyler?
Yeah, I just think that this whole scene, first of all, was like probably my favorite part of the movie. Just because it was so funny and so telling of the whole relationship in general. Like, I didn't even notice it the first time I watched it, but watching it back, like, you see him pull back from the kiss and he even kind of shakes his head like, no, like, why are you kissing me? And, the fact that he runs after Kimmy. But the most telling part is Kimmy hops in the car and then Michael hops in the car and literally almost runs over Jules. I thought that was hilarious. Like, he was like, I don't even care about you at this point. Like, I'm about to back into you and hit you with the car. And then she's just, being her crazy self. She's like, who doesn't leave their car unlocked these days? They don't trust anyone, and then steal the bread van. So it just, like I said, just plays into her character. But yeah, it just really showed like Michael was not in it for Jules.
And Mason, in a way, you almost have another musical number.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
I was gonna kind of wrote that down too. What the world needs now.
George says to Jules, do you really love him? Or is this just about winning? Right?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so
I
that's
was
something
gonna bring
that
that
stuck
up
with me,
too.
something that was like so apparent or so worthy of writing down that I had to write it down. Maybe it was all about winning for Jules.
And even thinking back to the beginning of the movie, she didn't say, I love this man. There was no indication of like this revelation, like, I love him. I love that he does this. And then I'm suddenly realizing this. No, she legit said, like, I don't want to lose him. So I'm going there to break up this wedding to not lose my best friend.
The only thing that made this particular scene that we're talking about explode in the way that it did was the fact that Kimmy saw it, right? Like, of course she was there to witness the kiss happen, but let's say Kimmy wasn't there. That kiss under the pergola or whatever would have been the exact same kiss on the boat. It's just the only thing that mattered was the fact that Kimmy was there and she saw it and she reacted, and that's what triggered the entire chase.
So that's really interesting you brought that up. Let's play out a scenario in which she isn't there. Kimmy is not there to see this kiss. What happens?
I don't think anything would have happened. It would have been a nice little kiss, and it probably would have confused the heck out of them even more. But I think that in the end, he still would have chosen Kimmy, as he should have.
Would he have told Kimberly?
No, I don't think so.
On your wedding day, at least for myself, it is a day of wild emotions, and it's like a blur. It's an absolute blur that whole day. And so I think having it on that day, like, you have like one thing in mind, and then to throw in like an atomic bomb like that, it still would have repelled him. I think that window was lost because he's there, everyone's there. So regardless if Kimmy saw it or not, I still think he would have been like, probably in his head, like, where was this yesterday on the boat when I opened my heart to you?
Wait,
Right?
and that would have made any difference? Like 24 hours earlier?
I think so. I mean,
different, I think.
And then he decides like, oh, thank God you did it now. Like.
Well, I think in any big decision, you sleep on it, right? Like, you don't just make a big decision, you just make it like off the cuff. But if you do it the night before and you sleep on, you have time to reflect, that could have changed the next way, where maybe he goes, hey, Kimmy, we need to pause this and look at this more holistically. I think that not being able to sleep on it, at least from my perspective, I couldn't make a big off the cuff like that at the wedding venue where I'm supposed to be marrying somebody else. She loved the idea instead of loved him, loved the idea of him.
We have yet to mention much about Kimberly. So let's take a look and then discuss.
I made you my maid of honor.
You wanted to keep me close. You didn't trust me for a second.
You kissed him at my parents' house on my wedding day.
Bitch, tramp. I lost. He doesn't love me. He loves you. I'd like to take you to the church so you can walk down that aisle and marry the man of our dreams, because he sure wants to marry you.
Let me start by saying that the culture in a men's bathroom could not be more different than culture in the women's bathroom.
Especially at a Chicago baseball game.
You make best friends in the bathroom.
Yeah.
You're like, girl, you look good today. You better. That's the girl culture in the bathroom.
And it's definitely a code. I know as a kid, I had a bunch of friends that were girls that I grew up with, and we'd be out at a restaurant, and then suddenly they'd all leave, and I'd be the only person left at the table. They all have to go at the same time. I doubt they have to go. But anyway, enough of bathroom talk. Let's talk about the scene, and let's talk about Kimberly.
The goddess. I loved Kimmy. Like, she was making me fall in love with her. I was like, you're so perfect, and you're annoyingly perfect, like Jules kept saying.
I don't even want to get into what I would do if I was Kimmy, but
no, I want to get into it. If it was you, what would happen?
Let's get into
let's
it.
just say I clapped along with the people in the restroom. I was cheering on Kimmy at that point. I was just like, now hit her. I was just like, now do something else.
She was in the right, she had a reason to say all the things she said. They were the truth.
It was her moment, and it totally was, and I loved it. She was going for it. She was calling her out, but then she gave her a hug. I would not be hugging her, and I would not be putting her in my wedding. She can drive me back, but that's as far as it goes.
She can go.
But you know what? It also just shows who Kimmy is. Like, she called her a bitch. She's like, get out of here, you bitch. Like, that is not Kimmy. Like, when she said that, I was like, whoa, get her. But it just goes back, like, she also heard Jules out. Like, most upset people would be like, I don't want to hear a word you say, get out of my face, leave this bathroom. She was like, no, like, I want to hear what you have to say, because there must be an explanation. And it just, I think that Jules turned around in that moment. Like, it made me emotional. I was like, wow, like, I'm glad that she is being this person. And she said, I want to take you to the church so that you can marry the man of our dreams. And I think it showed Kimmy, like, this man means a lot to me, but I want you to marry him. I almost feel like she was appreciative. Like, thank you for passing the torch and like letting me win. So I don't know. I just think it really showed Kimmy's character.
I think I'm on my own for a lot of this because I don't like either of them. I thought that they were both like kind of annoying. I thought Kimmy the whole time, I don't think she was like as wholesome or as nice, I feel like, as a lot of people do, because of like the elevator scene. And then a lot like throughout, I was kind of like, Kimmy did not give me like great vibes.
She also is not someone you'd want to be in a car with.
Yeah, no. Like the very first scene, I was like, oh wow. Overall, neither of them, I wasn't a fan. So this scene in particular, I thought Kimmy was pretty nice about it, I guess, like considering the events that happened, like giving her a hug at the end, but overall, not a fan of either of them.
I just never liked her character. I just didn't like her. I was always Team Jules, even though how deplorable she was. I just didn't like Kim. I just didn't like her vibe.
I liked Kim in that scene. I thought that was one of the first scenes she was actually real. I've actually been a best man for someone that I've only known for like 2 hours at his wedding. And it's a really awkward
Wait. You can't just start. Okay. How in the world did that happen?
We got a friend and she married this guy on a whim. And next thing you know, we're flying to Hawaii and I'm this guy's best man. And we get on the ferry to go to Vancouver. And the first thing he said to me was, do you love your girlfriend? And I was like, yeah. He's like, we'll never fucking marry her then. And I was like, oh shit, this is the wedding trip we're going on. All right. Okay.
And she's like, you knew me for 8 minutes and you asked me to be your maid of honor. And she's like, yeah, because Michael trusted you. So I trusted you.
Exactly.
And that speaks a lot to Kimmy's relationship with Michael. Now, I would have just touched on this. I think Michael is a piece of shit. I think, like, why do they like him? I'm confused because there's no good quality of him. I don't know why they're fighting. Like, they just
Someone give me a good quality of Michael. Come on.
He's hot.
He is.
He's
Not hot enough
He's
though
a
to justify
pleaser.
everything else.
No. He's I don't know.
So
I was
he's
lost.
good looking
Not
and
me.
has no other good qualities. Wow. Okay.
He's
That's
like
just-
something nice to look at.
He's
He's
definitely
George
a
was better
people
looking.
pleaser.
Okay, people pleaser. Okay, so he's good looking, people pleaser. Do we have any more?
No, that's it.
He's selfish. He's selfish. He even said, he was like, I will stick to my low paying job because it's what I love. Which, okay, now granted, he does love it and everyone deserves to have a job that they love.
Mhm.
But like, he's literally okay with Cameron Diaz or with Kimmy, you know, not going to school and living her life. Like, he's okay with her following him around.
Mhm.
Like, girl,
Yeah.
move on.
That was the scene where I was like, oh, he's kind of trash. Like she just
Yeah,
wants to,
definitely.
finish school and have her own career, and he kind of blew up at her and like nearly called off the whole thing.
I don't know. I think the 90s, I think this has changed, but I think 90s, 80s movies, I talked to my wife about this on the weekend. A lot of these movies really kind of portrayed this like stereotype of like how women should be to men. And I think it's absolute bullshit. I think they, you know, looked up to this guy that treated them like shit. And, you know, I don't know. I think we've evolved as society. So looking back to where we are in this, you know, 2020 thing, I think it's kind of highlights how a lot of times women were perceived, which I wasn't agreeing a lot with. If we're going to get super deep, I didn't mean to get too deep right now, but that's how I kind of saw that. There's a major generational gap from seeing it 20 plus years later from when it first came out.
I was born in the 90s and I
thank
watched
you.
this with my mom. She's here right now. And she was coming away like, I love that movie. And I was like, I didn't. So it was just funny, like how she was like, how could you not love that? And I'm like, I was born in 92, but I mean, growing up now with how we've evolved,
Someone like Ashley's mom watching it doesn't think anything of it because it's like, oh yeah, that's would make total sense for someone to do that. Like, that's cool. But for us, we're just kind of like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, that is kind of like what she probably would have done and what he would have wanted. And no one would be like, why are you dropping out of school? Like, that's crazy.
The whole thought of how we've evolved and like how movies have evolved and characters have evolved. I have to say, I was very shocked in the first 5 minutes of the film when I found out that George was gay. And I was like, 97? Like, this is a gay character? Like, and then even throughout the film, he wasn't like flamboyantly gay like a lot of old school gay characters were. And I was like, they really made him like a masculine gay character in this film. And I just thought it was really progressive for a film like that to have like kind of a toned down gay man in the film. I just thought that was very cool and I wanted to comment on that.
Sometimes this movie does surprise, you know, and does break the mold of the films that were out in those days. Usually the girl and the guy always end up together at the end. That is not the case in this movie. So let's take a look at the last scene and discuss.
Hello, George.
I can just picture you there sitting alone at your table in your lavender gown.
George, I didn't tell you my dress was lavender.
Suddenly, a familiar song. Then you're off your chair in one exquisite movement, and there he is. And he comes towards you. Maybe there won't be marriage. Maybe there won't be sex. But by God, there'll be dancing.
Mason, you know what I'm going to say.
Musical Glee.
There's definitely a theme of the movie. You could look at it. You could look at it as a musical in some ways. Before we get into the discussion, we have another poll. Boom. Were you satisfied by the ending of this movie? There we go. All right. It is similar to the previous result. 8 out of 9 people said yes, the movie had a satisfying ending, whereas one person said no. Who's the no?
I did not like the ending. I think just my expectations ruined me. Maybe I just like also haven't watched enough rom-coms, but like everything I've watched, I just had a certain thing that I thought was going to happen. Obviously, like them ending together, and when that didn't happen, I was upset about it. I felt like there was like no point to the movie. When I saw the ending, I was like, oh, I was disappointed.
Did you like anything from this movie?
I was gonna say, I don't think I did, because like I think about the characters, I didn't like any of them. George was the best, but I also, even then, I was like, I had no attachment to anyone.
A lot of people at the beginning said they were rooting for her to get the guy at the end, but she didn't get the guy. Yet the same people who said that like the ending. So why?
They stayed friends and they got married, and everyone did what they were supposed to do, and like could have been more interesting, like made more people happy if they like ran away together, because that's what you expect to happen. But it was kind of a more unexpected ending in that like nothing really changed and they just kind of went through this thing together.
I completely agree with what you said. Like, you know, you see the end of these rom-com movies and it's the end of the wedding and they're like, oh, like, goodbye, I love you. But first of all, I thought it was realistic that like, okay, after everything was said and done, Kimmy did not go up to Jules and be like, thank you so much for letting me have your best friend. Like, you know, like you almost think that's what's going to happen. Like they're going to have this cute little moment and it's like, oh, lovey-dovey. No, like she almost got swept away in the crowd and didn't even get to say goodbye to Michael. But you know, they had their cute little hug and goodbye.
She like had some pretty serious growth happen. And I think if we kind of look at that, like it shows that sometimes what we think we want isn't what we need. And she still was able to have a best friend at the end that cared for her, which I think she was just starving for, was somebody to truly care for her. And that friend that she thought that she was missing has moved on to somebody else. And at the end of it, she still had someone that loved her dearly and that was there for her. So I thought that she had this real growth, if we're like looking at it from her story lens, that was kind of beautiful in many ways. Of this is what happens in life. We might want something really bad, but it's not what we need in our life at that time. So
it also seemed like in that moment she was kind of like realizing how grateful she is for him to be there. So I thought it was a good ending, that kind of like your old best friend's gone, but your new best friend who you're with now is gonna be there for you.
I agree with Mason in that sense, because at the beginning, if we remember, she like was not avoiding his calls, but hadn't responded in a month. So I think when she found out that she was possibly losing this man in her life, she needed that reassurance, which was George.
Is Michael going to be unfaithful to Kimberly?
Maybe not with Juliette.
Somebody else, yeah.
I think they're divorced within 2 years.
He's gonna get some of that money and hit the road. So
it's funny that you say that, because I was like, what if they made a sequel and then it's like my best friend's divorce
together,
and like Juliette Roberts is
later.
like, I'm stealing him back, and like I was like, okay, that would actually be really iconic. But
this time she's about to get married and he realizes, oh no.
Yeah, like
Oh,
he finally
God.
gets divorced and he's like, wait, no, I love you too. And she's like, bro, the ship sailed.
Too late.
Yeah.
But I would want to see Cameron Diaz.
I don't think there's any way that these two characters are seeing each other and they're not cheating on Kimberly.
I would think it would certainly be necessary to make sure that like you were there, right? Like if I was Kimberly, I'd be like, yeah, you guys can see each other, but let me at least be there, or have it be in a public space. But like, yeah, no, they probably shouldn't be like in a bedroom together ever again.
Honestly, it's probably the least of their worries at that point.
I think they might be a
At
phone
some
call
point.
kind of friendship from this point on. Like
Yeah, I
it'll
was
be
gonna
like,
say.
hey, how are you? And that's it.
But then smartphones come along and then it gets complicated again.
And
Yeah.
then she
Okay,
finds his
fine.
Instagram.
It's been very interesting hearing everyone's thoughts on this ending, because ironically, the ending that you just watched was actually determined by people just like you. You see, My Best Friend's Wedding had a focus group, much like this, where average moviegoers back in 1997 got to watch the film before it was released and were prompted to give their reactions to the movie. there was one major takeaway that the producers came with, and that was the ending had to be changed. Originally, it was shot where Julia Roberts is sitting at a table, brokenhearted, and she's lost in her own thoughts, when she's interrupted by a handsome guy who comes up to her table and introduces himself as Michael's best friend. And he says, "Hey, I heard a lot of great things about you." And the movie ends on this happy note where it's to believe that the two of them will then become a couple. But audiences hated it. And in the focus group, it was clear that that was not working. So they reshot the ending to what you just saw, where ultimately Julia Roberts does not have that happy ending. But maybe she did. Maybe her happy ending, after all, was friendship and not love. The happy ending was George, not a man that could sweep her off her feet. You guys agreed with the panelists back in 1997, except for Nicole. You would have been the contrarian. But that's okay, because all opinions are respected. All right, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to review. Each of you has sent me your ratings for this movie, 1 to 5, 1 meaning you hated it, and 5 being you absolutely loved it. I have averaged all the numbers together, and it is time to reveal the results. Tonight, this panel has rated the movie as a 3.0.
Oh,
So let's hear from the people who disliked it first. Crystal.
I gave it a 2 because A-list cast, and as a film like person, I loved how it was shot. It was beautifully shot, and I can appreciate the what am I trying to say? Just how it was executed. But other than that, the story was trash.
Ashley?
I don't know that I have much to add. I think, like she said, it was an A-list cast. I think the acting was great. I just thought they were unlikable characters, so it was hard for me to like the film as a whole.
For the people who said, yeah, it was all right, which is the majority of this panel, 4 people on it said that. So it just means you kind of just feel impartial about the movie. What is that? What does ranking it a 3 mean to you?
I changed my vote coming into this. I would have, if you had told me we were going to do that, I would have been a 1 or a 2. But just listening to other people and watching it while we were doing this in the background and watching the clips, like, it's all right. It's not as bad as I thought it was. I mean, I was tempted to put 2, but I put a 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a rom-com guy at all. But I thought it was okay. Like, I think it was kind of echoing. The cast was great. Kind of what Mike was saying too. I originally probably would have been a 2, but I think understanding perspective of how other people saw it too also had me see it a bit differently. And just kind of walking through the process, I took away more from this conversation than I did laying on my couch on Sunday watching this. So I thought it was okay.
Who ranked it a 5? Mason. It's the music numbers, right?
It really is. I mean, I laughed, I sang along, I got a little emotional, like the scene when she was sitting in the hallway with her cigarette with the guy telling her not to smoke. I was like, okay, I feel you, girl. But like
Paul Giamatti too, which is a very weird, because like he's obviously really famous now. But then it's just he's a bellhop. But continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, I would watch it again. I was rooting for people sometimes. I was rooting against them the other times. I just thought it was a really fun movie to watch, and I'm kind of shocked that I was in the minority of putting it at a 5. I thought that was where we were going with this.
I also really liked that it didn't end with love and the car driving away to credits rolling down the screen. I thought it was cool that it was okay that that Jules failed, that she lost, and it was okay.
All right, that concludes today's discussion on my best friend's wedding. Tune in next time to see what a new panel thinks after watching The Sixth Sense for the first time. I would like to thank the panelists for giving me their time tonight, and the viewers watching at home. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We are also on the podcast app, so type "Who Needs a Film Critic" to get all the episodes downloaded straight to your phone. Thank you to the panelists. That's it for now. Good night.